All right, so the philosophical schools of the Vedas. I should start out by saying that the Vedas themselves are one thing, and the philosophical systems and schools that come out of the Vedas are, well, not another thing entirely. This is where the majority of philosophy is really done, right? Uh, it's you have the Upanishads, right? So the Vedas divide into four parts each, right? You have the Samhitas, which are the collection of the main sutras, right, and mantras, the invocation of the various gods of the Vedas, including, Vishnu and Brahma, Sita, right, and so on and so forth. Agni, god of fire. And then you have the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas are the second part of the Vedas, right? This is a further step, kind of in their evolution, and these are the religious functions of the Vedas, right, or religious interpretations, right? These are the rites and like the religious rites and uh, understandings of those samhitas. Then you have the Aranyakas, which are the interpretation of the social importance of those brahmanas. And finally, you have the Upanishads, which are philosophical interpretations of all these things, right? All those things taken together, and abstracted out into more general philosophical principles. Um, and all these things are presented in the form of sutras, right? Um, and the sutras are meant to be sung, right? So whether you're talking about the Samhitas, the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, or the Upanishads, all of them are sutras, right? And one other thing, uh, the Vedas are probably one of the oldest, if not the oldest, religious system that we have record of, right? Since Sanskrit, as the language that they were written in, dates back to about 1000 BCE in the written form, right? Perhaps even further back, right? I think about as far back as 1800 BCE is when Sanskrit language began to emerge. But don't quote me on that particular date. The Vedas are also so called, they're derived from the Sanskrit word vid, meaning to know, right? So these are sources of knowledge, right? So we have these aspects of the Vedas, and then we have what are called the Astika schools, right? The various philosophical systems that emerged as forms of interpreting the teachings of the Vedas in various ways. And we'll touch on some of the various Astika schools in passing um, throughout the semester. For now, I just want you to know that they exist. Astika literally translates to believers, right? So those who believe in the authority of the Vedas, right? And the Vedas themselves are said to be Apurya right? Apurya means, Apurya means not of man, right? So it's the idea that they are authorless. Right? They are themselves divine revelation. Not the word of God, but the universe the knowledge of the universe made manifest to us. Right? Um, because the gods themselves are just functions of avatism, right? They're part of the gods are part of the cycle of reincarnation themselves, and the goal in Hinduism, within the Vedic systems, is to achieve moksha, or liberation, from the cycle of reincarnation. So since the gods themselves are trapped within the cycle, that means that, they perish, they die, and you can be, and they are reincarnated, right? Um, and the ultimate goal is for even them to cease to exist, right? To be liberated from existence. Now, for the Vedas, there's one metaphor I want you to take from this, right? And it's of the relationship between Brahman and Atman, right? So Brahman is the universal collective sort of consciousness, as it were. It's ultimate reality itself. And again, the Vedas return us to a primarily metaphysically concerned framework where ethics comes out of the metaphysics rather than the metaphysics comes out of the ethics, as was the case with Confucianism. And Atman is the individual or the self, right? Now, there is this phrase, tatvam asi, right? That this is, right? Or that thou art, right? You can translate it either way. And the idea of tatwamasi is that there is ultimately, no real distinction between you and I or any other being in the world, right? We all share the same ultimately share the same essence, which is Brahman, right? We might have individual Atman, right, selves or souls that distinguish us from others, but even those Atman share the same source, right? Which is why in one of the Vedas, um, the relationship between Atman and Brahman is described as waves cresting on the sea, right? Atman are the individual waves that rise up from the ocean and crash down, rise up and crash down, repeating the cycle, right? Like the cycle of reincarnation. But here's the thing, you might be able to identify an individual wave, but the wave is still connected to the boundless depths of the ocean, even as it rises, crests, and falls, right? It's intimately connected to it. It pulls from the same source, and in fact, it is one and the same thing as the ocean, right? You're just noticing one blip of the ocean's activity, right? One blip of the cycle of reality in this case. And that's like one of the things that will be a recurring theme um, in the various Astika schools that we talk about as we go through various philosophical problems. And I mention like how they address the problem versus how Western philosophy does.